What would you do if the person you trusted most chose to betray you the moment you couldn't fight back? It's not a question most people ever expect to face. But when you serve your country, you learn to prepare for everything, even the unthinkable. I was deployed overseas when my entire life unraveled, not on the battlefield but in an email. No warning, no conversation, just a quiet click that ended a 13-year marriage and emptied everything I thought was safe. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about what happens when a man refuses to break, when he chooses patience over rage, silence over drama, and justice over revenge. If you've ever felt like the ground disappeared beneath your feet, if you've ever been blindsided by someone you loved, then you'll understand every word of what comes next. And if you're new here, welcome. This channel is a space for real stories with real consequences. Stories that challenge the way we think about love, trust, and justice. If that speaks to you, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my place? Let's begin. You never notice the moment the cracks first appear. Not when you're busy holding everything together. Looking back, I can pinpoint when the shift started. But at the time, it just felt like life being complicated. Lena and I had been married for over a decade. We met during a winter fundraiser in Colorado Springs while I was stationed at Fort Carson. She was working admin at a physical therapy clinic, always smiling, always sharp. She said I had quiet eyes. I liked that. It made me feel seen. Back. Then she was warm, steady, the kind of woman you trusted with your life. We built a life in Denver, a modest home, no kids, just us and a rescue dog named Juno. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. We were simple people, or so I thought. Things didn't fall apart all at once. The unraveling was slow, subtle. You could miss it if you weren't paying close attention. But soldiers are trained to notice small changes, shifts in rhythm, posture, tone. Lena's changes were minor at first. She stopped asking about my day, started answering my calls on speaker, even when she was alone, claimed it was just easier. She said she was tired more often, went to bed early but stayed up late in the glow of her phone screen. Her gym routine changed. Now it was a personal trainer just to tone up. I never met him. She stopped inviting me to her office events, said it was just girls from work, and I'd be bored. None of it, on its own, was proof of anything. And I wasn't the kind of man to check her messages or follow her around like a jealous fool. My father used to say, if you have to spy to feel secure, you're already in the wrong relationship. I believed that. I still do. But I wasn't blind either. I noticed the new passwords, the laughter that felt distant, like it wasn't meant for me anymore. I'd walk in and she'd put her phone down too quickly, or say she had a headache right after texting someone for an hour straight. I asked once, "Everything okay?" She smiled too quickly and said, "Yeah, just work stress." Maybe I wanted to believe her, maybe I didn't want to know. Instead of accusing, I started preparing, quietly, calmly, not out of paranoia, but out of principle. I've been deployed 3 times. I've been ambushed. I've lost men. One thing you learn is, always respect your gut. I found a small storage unit across town under a different name, moved some of the irreplaceables, my grandfather's war medals, my mother's jewelry, my service records, even Juno's adoption papers. Opened a secondary checking account with another bank. Rerouted part of my pay there. Not much, just enough to have something untouched if the worst came. My name was the only one on the mortgage thanks to the VA loan, but Lena had been pushing for a refinance to get better rates. I'd stalled. I told her it wasn't the right time. She called me old-fashioned. I smiled and nodded. The last evening before I deployed, she drove me to the base. The air between us was cool, not hostile, just empty, like we were both playing roles we'd rehearsed for too long. She gave me a hug, not tight, not tearful, just routine. "Stay safe, okay?" she said, pulling away. Her voice was flat. like she was wishing a coworker a good weekend, not saying goodbye to her husband for possibly the last time. That moment stayed with me. The desert heat in Syria was punishing, but not half as harsh as the silence that grew between us during those first few weeks of my deployment. Her texts got shorter, delayed, then they stopped altogether. I assumed she was busy. Life happens. I focused on my unit, my mission, my job. We were training local defense forces, monitoring unstable zones. It wasn't glamorous, but it mattered, and it kept my mind off home, until the email came. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before the bomb dropped, there were more subtle signs. She stopped sending care packages, no notes, no video chats. When I called, she was always just stepping into something. And yet her social media, at least what I could still see, showed her at brunches, at wineries, smiling beside people I didn't recognize. One day, while organizing my digital files during downtime, I logged into our home security system out of pure habit. I'd set it up myself, a small suite of cameras inside and out, mostly to keep an eye on Juno. But what I saw wasn't our dog. It was a man I didn't recognize. He was barefoot, drinking coffee out of my favorite mug, wearing my Army PT sweatshirt. He walked through my house like he belonged there. And Lena? She walked right beside him, laughing, brushing his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world, like they'd done it 100 times. I paused the feed, sat there in the dim, tent light listening to the fan overhead, watching this stranger live in my home, touch my things, my wife. I didn't feel rage, not then, not yet. I felt confirmation. The signs had been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them clearly. Now I had the footage. I had the silence. I had the instinct. All that was left was the execution. That night I didn't sleep much. I stared at the ceiling of my barracks, arms crossed, heartbeat slow. There's a kind of stillness that comes over you when you've crossed a mental threshold. When something inside you says, this won't break you, this will define you. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to chase. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to wait. And when the time came, I would act. Not out of anger, but out of precision. The storm had arrived, and I was ready. The desert had its own kind of silence. Not the peaceful kind you find in forests or by rivers, but the heavy, hollow silence of distance, of knowing you're thousands of miles away from everything that matters. That's where I was the morning I received the email that detonated my entire life. I was stationed near Al-Hasaka, Syria, part of a joint NATO mission. Dust coated everything. Our boots, our teeth, even the corners of our sleep. I had just finished my rotation, boots still laced tight, sweat drying beneath my vest. Out of habit, I opened my laptop while waiting in line for a tepid breakfast and spotty Wi-Fi. That's when I saw it. Subject line: let's handle this like adults. No preamble. No soft landing. Just an attached PDF and a brief message that read like a business memo. David, I've filed for divorce. I've already moved out. The accounts have been settled. I hope we can move forward respectfully. The PDF was real. Signed. Stamped. Legally. Final in the state of Colorado. It was over. Just like that. 13 years compressed into 3 lines and a digital signature. I stared at the screen as the camp noise buzzed around me. Men shouting over rations, someone swearing at the satellite signal, a radio spitting static. None of it registered. My entire body was still, but something inside cracked in half. Didn't say a word. I shut the laptop, stood up, walked to the communal showers, and stood under freezing water until my knuckles stopped shaking. I got dressed for patrol, said nothing to anyone. But something had shifted behind my eyes. Something that wouldn't unshift. That night, lying on a cot that creaked with every breath, I opened the laptop again and wrote a reply. Just one word. Understood. No accusations, no pleading, no dramatic questions. I wasn't going to perform pain for someone who'd already rehearsed my absence. If she wanted closure, she'd have to find it without a witness. Carlos, my closest buddy in the unit, noticed something was off by the next day. He looked up from sharpening his knife and said, "You all right, man?" I nodded. Just noise back home. He nodded back and didn't ask again. Military men understand what silence means better than most. He knew that whatever had hit me hadn't come from enemy fire. Later that week, I checked our joint bank accounts. I already knew what I would find, but my hands still trembled as I typed in the password. It had always been Juno Airford 20, named after our dog and the date we adopted her. Savings account, $47,000, balance, 0.0, joint checking, $8,500, balance, 22.37, retirement CD, closed emergency fund, liquidated. My stomach clenched, but my mind stayed calm. I clicked through the transaction history. The withdrawals hadn't come all at once. She'd been emptying it slowly, methodically, starting the very week I deployed. A few thousand here, $5,000 there, one big lump sum just 2 days before. The email arrived. I stared at the numbers, realizing they weren't just about money. They were about intent. This had been planned. Back at my cot, I logged into the home security system. The feed was grainy, but it was live. I had installed those cameras myself, top of the line, discreet, mostly to keep an eye on Juno. But now they served a different purpose. There he was. A man I'd never seen before. Early 30s, built like a gym coach, wearing my Seahawks hoodie and sitting on my couch. He was drinking from the ceramic mug Lena gave me on our 2nd anniversary. The one with "To the man who serves us all," written in blue script. He looked right at home. Then Lena walked into frame. She wasn't shocked to see him there. She didn't look guilty. She smiled, touched his arm, sat beside him, like it was his place now, like she was his. Something cold and sharp slid into my chest. Not rage, not yet, but a clarity so precise it hurt. I watched them sip coffee while my dog lay curled at their feet, while the kitchen I remodeled last year glowed behind them. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't impulsive. This was orchestrated. I stared at the feed for almost an hour, watching their movements, analyzing her body language, the way she tilted her head, the way she touched his wrist when she laughed. All the small gestures I used to think belonged to us, but I didn't let the pain in. Instead, I did what I've always done when chaos struck. I made a list. I flipped to the back of my field notebook and wrote, "Contact Marcus, secure financial. Documents, freeze accounts, review VA loan details, request legal consultation, monitor home activity, get emergency leave." I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. I didn't call Lena. I didn't yell. That would have given her power. No, I wasn't going to chase someone who had already run. She'd made her move. Now it was my turn. When people imagine betrayal, they think of shouting, broken dishes, slammed doors. But real betrayal, the kind that slices deep, often arrives silently. It slips in through the cracks you didn't notice, smiles in your face while moving pieces behind your back. And when it hits, it doesn't explode. It clicks. And that's what happened next. After watching that security footage and reading the banking records, something clicked. Not in my heart, but in my head. The soldier in me, the strategist, woke up. I wasn't going to mourn. I was going to mobilize. The next morning, I called Marcus Nguyen. Marcus wasn't just my college roommate back when I was doing night classes through the military's education program. He was also a former Army JAG officer turned civilian lawyer with a specialization in fraud, real estate law, and, luckily for me, military financial protections. He owed me a favor. I'd pulled him out of a bad situation once, years ago, in Kandahar. Now it was his turn. He answered on the 3rd ring. "David? Yeah. What's going on?" She left, cleaned me out, and there's a man in my house. A pause. "All right, let's slow it down. Tell me everything, from the top." So I did. When I got to the part about the refinancing, he stopped. "Me? She refinanced your house?" "Yes." "In whose name?" "Mine. But I never signed anything." "Then we have a major problem, and a legal opportunity." He had me email him the bank documents and property records. 2 hours later, he called back, his voice sharper now. "She forged your signature." I expected that answer. Still, hearing it spoken aloud made something in my jaw tighten. You sure? Yes. The middle initial is wrong. You're military. Records listed as D. The signature on the loan says E. It's a sloppy fake. The stroke order is off too. Obvious to anyone trained in document forensics. I let out a long breath. What else? She added a co-applicant. Name, Eric Benson. The man on my couch. The thief in my sweatshirt. Marcus continued. The loan was for $400,000, and the funds were dispersed into a joint account listed under both of their names, an account you were never added to. Jesus, I muttered. There's more. She listed your property for potential sale through a local broker named Sean Keller. I did a background check. He's got 2 previous complaints for suspicious cash transactions and under-the-table appraisals. You think they're working together? I think they've done this before. That sentence stuck in my head, like a nail. I had been assuming this was just a personal betrayal, an emotional disaster. But Marcus saw something else, a pattern. That evening, he sent me a folder of research. 3 other cases, each involving military spouses who refinanced homes while their partners were deployed. 2 of them involved fraudulent signatures. 1 involved a business partner who matched Eric's profile exactly. Former gym trainer, no fixed address, no traceable employment. Each case ended the same. The house sold off market, far below value, and the original owner left with nothing. They're targeting military families, Marcus told me, because they know you're not home to fight it. I leaned back in my cot, the heat pressing down on my chest like a loaded vest. This wasn't about a marriage anymore. This was something bigger, calculated, cold, organized. I asked the only question that mattered. What do we do next? First, Marcus said, we get your name legally protected. I'm filing a fraud alert on your credit and contesting the refinance with the VA lender. Second, we notify the bank. Third, we contact federal authorities. This crosses state lines and involves forged government documents, including VA loan certifications. This is federal fraud. I paused, then asked, do we go to the FBI? Yes, but we need proof, hard proof. I have security footage, I said. You what? Installed cameras last year, interior and exterior. Uploads to a cloud. I've got hours of them in the house, on the couch, talking about property stuff. David, Marcus said, voice low. That might be our smoking gun. The next few days passed in a haze of quiet movement. I requested emergency leave under family fraud circumstances. It was approved within 48 hours. The Army doesn't mess around when its own are under threat. My CO shook my hand and said, whatever this is, take care of it. We've got your 6. I didn't tell anyone I was coming home, not Lena, not her new boyfriend, not even my neighbors. I wanted silence, distance, and leverage. When I landed at Denver International, it was late. Cold. I checked into a motel under a false name, Derek Holden, a pseudonym I'd used during a training, OPA in Europe. It felt strangely satisfying to bring that identity back now. I wasn't returning as a husband. I was returning as a ghost. I met Marcus the next morning at a diner 30 minutes outside town. He looked tired, but focused. A man in the middle of a war without a gun. He slid a folder across the table. Everything we need: financial documents, property records, loan application, security footage, timestamps. I also pulled Eric's record. 2 DUI arrests, 1 pending investigation for insurance fraud. Unbelievable, I said. And Sean Keller, he's already been flagged by 2 agencies. We might be looking at a larger scam ring here, but we need more direct links. What about Lena? I asked, my voice flat. He looked at me carefully. We can't know if she's a victim or a willing participant yet, but we're getting closer. I nodded, slowly. Then it's time. For what? He asked. I looked out the diner window, watching snow begin to fall in fat, lazy flakes. To let them walk right into it. There's a moment, right before every mission, when time feels like it holds its breath. It's not fear exactly. It's focus. That moment between planning and action, between knowing what they've done and deciding what you'll do next. I was living in that moment now. Not in uniform, not with a rifle, but with something sharper. Purpose. When I left that diner, with Marcus, we didn't shake hands or smile. There was no need. We were soldiers again, just in a different war. And this time, the battlefield was my life. The first step was simple. Verify what I already suspected. Marcus had given me a file, but I needed to see it with my own eyes. I drove past the house just after 6 a.m. The streets were quiet, dew still, fresh on the lawns. I parked 2 blocks down behind an old pickup. From that distance, I could see the familiar silhouette of my home, the porch light I'd installed last spring still flickering from the bad bulb I never got around to replacing. But something new caught my eye. A for sale sign had been hammered into the front yard. Fresh paint, professional logo. Beneath it, the name, Sean Keller, Keller & Company Real Estate. There it was. Proof. They weren't just squatting in my life. They were planning to sell it. I snapped a photo, zoomed in on the contact number, and sent it to Marcus. His reply was instant. Confirmed. He's active. Same broker we flagged. My jaw clenched, but I stayed put. A few minutes later, Eric came out of the house. He was wearing my flannel shirt, the one Lena used to sleep in on cold nights. I watched him walk down the driveway carrying a bag of garbage and toss it in the bin like he owned the place. The nerve. I waited until he went back inside before driving off. I didn't need to be seen. Not yet. That same afternoon, I walked into the regional branch of the mortgage bank that had issued the refinance loan. I wore a dark jacket, baseball cap low, and carried a folder stuffed with documents, everything Marcus had dug up. The loan officer, a man in his early 50s, with a nervous smile welcomed me in. I sat across from him, laid out my military ID, and opened the folder. "I need you to look at something," I said. "This is the signature on the refinance application, and this," I slid him my driver's license, "is my real signature." He looked back and forth. Once, twice, his expression changed immediately. "Who processed this?" I asked. I don't know offhand. I'll need to check the records." "Do that. And understand something. This loan was signed without my consent. The co-applicant is a man named Eric Benson. He does not live here legally, and the woman who submitted this with him is my wife, now ex-wife. She forged my signature while I was deployed with the U.S. Army." The man swallowed hard. "I'll have to escalate this to our legal department." "Please do. And while you're at it, freeze all activity related to this property. The FBI has been notified, and a formal fraud complaint is in progress." He typed furiously into his terminal. I left with a receipt of my statement and written confirmation that all refinance activity had been frozen pending investigation. Step 1. Neutralize the threat of the sale. Next came the hard part. Surveillance. And proof. Marcus and I met again at his office. We reviewed hours of security footage. The cameras I had installed the year before, indoor and out, were still active and saving clips to a private cloud. Lena never thought to change the password. I had footage of Eric unlocking my safe, trying on my watch, pouring himself drinks from the bottle I brought back from Poland. They laughed in the kitchen I had remodeled with my own hands, used my grill, hosted friends, but what we really needed was audio. Proof of intent. So I upgraded the system. Installed 2 additional microphones, one in the living room ceiling, fixture another under the kitchen counter, both discreet, both legal, since I was still the primary owner of the house. We didn't have to wait long. Within 3 days, we had what we needed. On a Thursday afternoon, Lena and Eric sat down with Sean Keller at the dining table. "I've already got 2 buyers lined up," Sean said, placing papers on the table. "Both cash offers. If we move fast, we can avoid inspection." "What, about David?" Lena asked, her voice lower now. "What if he comes back?" Eric scoffed. "He won't. He's got sand in his boots and loyalty to the flag. Guys like that don't fight over furniture. We list it, sell it, and deal with fallout later. If he complains, we toss him a check and call it closure. I sat watching the footage with Marcus beside me, both of us frozen. He leaned back slowly. That's it. That's conspiracy. That's financial intent. That's fraud. We packaged the footage, the audio, and the financial records into a digital case file. Marcus delivered it to Agent Wolf at the FBI the next day. Her reply came within hours. This aligns with 2 open cases in other states. We believe you're part of a larger scheme targeting military families. What happens next? I asked her over the phone. We build, we watch. And when they make their final move, we move faster. From that moment on, every move Lena and Eric made was documented. Phone calls, emails, visits from buyers, conversations about appraisal manipulation, everything. I didn't contact Lena. I didn't answer her texts. I didn't even react when she posted photos online, smiling beside Eric, captioned with empty quotes about new beginnings. Let them enjoy it, I thought. Let them decorate the house they're about to be arrested in. The trap was nearly set. They just didn't know they were standing in the middle of it. There's a particular kind of satisfaction that only comes from knowing you were right when everyone else doubted you. It's not pride. It's not revenge. It's something deeper. Like standing at the center of a storm you predicted down to the minute, watching as it hits everyone who said you were overreacting. That was the feeling I carried the morning the trap finally sprung. By now, the FBI was fully embedded in the case. Agent Wolf had already begun mapping connections between Sean Keller and other suspicious real estate transactions. There were at least 5 other properties in 3 states, Colorado, Arizona, and North Carolina, tied to active-duty military homeowners who had mysteriously lost their homes while deployed. Each followed the same pattern: a power of attorney forged or falsely represented, a co-applicant added without consent, and the property transferred under market value to cash buyers with shady ties. I was the first one with complete documentation, video, audio, signatures, financial records, and most importantly, the will to press forward. We weren't just going after my house. We were going after the entire operation. But for that to happen, we needed one more move from them. One final action that sealed the conspiracy. It came faster than expected. Marcus called me at 6:43 a.m., sharp on a Tuesday. They've scheduled a private showing for a buyer. Today, 10 o'clock, your house. I didn't ask how he knew, I just trusted him. By now he was more than my lawyer. He was my second in command. We parked down the street again, this time in a rented SUV with tinted windows. From there we could see the driveway, the front door, and half the living room, through the open blinds. I hadn't stepped foot inside that house in months, and yet I could still remember every creak of the wood floors, every uneven tile I promised Lena I'd fix. Now it was a stage, and the performance was about to begin. At 9:51 a.m., a black BMW rolled up and parked directly in front. A sharply dressed woman stepped out holding a leather folder, clearly a potential buyer. Seconds later, Sean Keller pulled in behind her in a silver Audi, followed by a third car. Eric, of course, still wearing one of my old jackets like he'd earned the right to it. They greeted her with practiced charm. Eric shook her hand like a professional. Sean led them into the house with the smooth gestures of someone who had done this dozens of times. Inside, our upgraded security system captured everything. Marcus tapped into the live feed on his phone. The camera angle showed them in the living room and Sean. Beautiful space, recently updated. Kitchen remodeled just last year. Eric: we're relocating soon. Opportunity opened up out west. Buyer: are both owners involved in the sale? Sean: the other owner is deployed, but he signed over power of attorney. Everything's documented. We're authorized to handle the sale. There it was, the lie, the final proof. I had never signed over power of attorney. In fact, I'd explicitly told our lender I would not authorize any property action during deployment. The document they were referring to, a complete forgery we'd already submitted to the FBI's handwriting analysts. It even used my old signature from a high school yearbook. That statement made during a transaction was conspiracy, federal wire fraud, real estate fraud, identity theft, all wrapped in one neat, arrogant sentence. I turned to Marcus. That's it. He nodded. Time to make the call. I sent a text to Agent Wolf. They're inside, staging for sale. Buyer present. False claim of POA made. Her reply was instant. Moving in. Stay out of sight. Within 15 minutes, 4 unmarked government vehicles rolled into the neighborhood like ghosts. No lights. No sirens. Just quiet authority. Agents moved fast and coordinated, one positioned at each exit, one at the front door. The front door opened. The buyer stepped out first, looking confused, then alarmed as she was quietly pulled aside and briefed. Seconds later, Eric stepped out with Sean behind him. Neither had time to ask questions before they were both placed in cuffs. The moment I saw the cuffs snap shut on Eric's wrists, I felt something shift inside me. Not joy, not triumph, relief. It was over, or so I thought. That's when Lena pulled up. Her silver sedan came flying around the corner, tires screeching slightly as she braked in front of the house. She got out, still in her work clothes, confusion already spreading across her face as she took in the sight of the FBI agents swarming the front yard. She tried to get past them. I could see her yelling, gesturing, her voice too far to hear, but her body language saying everything: panic, disbelief, dread. 2 agents stepped in front of her. Calm, direct. They began asking questions. She looked over toward the house, probably expecting to see Eric, maybe even me. What she saw instead was the end of her carefully arranged new life unraveling in real time. She wasn't arrested, not yet, but she wasn't going anywhere either. That evening I met with Agent Wolf in person. Her expression was unreadable as always, but there was something in her eyes, like she understood what this cost me. We've got enough to file, she said. Wire fraud, forgery, attempt to defraud a federally protected property under VA guidelines. Keller and Benson are already in custody. They've both lawyered up. But with this footage, we have leverage. And, Lena? I asked. She's not officially charged, but she's under investigation for willful complicity. We've also opened up her communication records. Depending on what we find, she may face obstruction. I stayed quiet. Wolf looked at me carefully. But here's where we're at a crossroads. Mr. Harper, you have a choice. We can pursue this fully criminally, which could mean jail time for your ex-wife, or we can negotiate a full financial and legal restitution agreement on your terms. I leaned back in the chair. Thought about the years I'd spent loving someone who had now become a legal liability. Will she lose everything? I asked. Wolf hesitated. If we go criminally, probably. Reputation, career, possibly even her license if those prescription pads we found in the truck connect back to her clinic. I stared out the window. The streetlights had begun to flicker. Another evening. Another decision. I don't want revenge, I said slowly. I want what's mine. And I want it on record that she gave it back. Then we'll draw up the settlement, Wolf replied. Full restitution, forfeiture of claim to the house. Any assets transferred in her name. A written confession, you get everything, and she walks with nothing but a signature and her silence. I nodded. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about ending this with the same control I started it with. 3 days later, Lena signed the papers. She surrendered all legal claims, agreed to leave the house within 48 hours, and turned over every cent left in the joint accounts. In exchange, I didn't press charges. Eric and Sean? They weren't so lucky. They were indicted on 5 federal charges. Sean eventually flipped, handing over documents that tied them to at least 7 other property scams involving military families. That was justice. Clean, quiet, documented. Just the way I planned it. I thought signing those papers would feel like the end, like finishing a long campaign and finally coming home. But when Lena's signature dried on that settlement document, when she surrendered the house, the money, and the last fragments of the life we built, I didn't feel anything close to victory. I just felt done. She left the house 2 days later, Quietly, no messages, no drama. I didn't see her go. I didn't want to. Marcus said she'd packed her things with the help of a moving crew. No contact, no resistance. She left behind a few boxes she must have thought I wouldn't care about. An old lamp, a set of towels, a mug with "World's Best Husband" written in fading gold letters. Funny. I tossed the mug in the trash without thinking. When I finally stepped inside again, alone, it didn't feel like my home anymore. The walls looked the same. The floor still creaked in the hallway near the bathroom. But the energy had shifted. It felt like a place someone else had lived in. A set for a life that had already been filmed and aired. I walked through each room like a ghost haunting my own past. In the kitchen, I ran my hand along the countertop I'd installed myself, back when Lena said she wanted something modern but warm. In the bedroom, I stood in silence, remembering the nights we'd spent talking about baby names we never used, vacations we never took. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the sound of the house breathing. Nothing. Just stillness. Didn't sleep there that night. Or the night after. Instead, I stayed at a small cabin outside Fort Collins, a place a buddy of mine had lent me. It was quiet, wood walls, no internet, just air and trees and time. That's where I finally let myself feel it. Not the anger. I'd used that already. Not grief. That had passed through me like a slow fever. What hit me finally was the realization that the version of me who had trusted her, the man who built a home thinking it would last, that version was gone. And maybe that was okay. Some things aren't meant to last. Some people are only meant to walk with you part of the journey. It doesn't make them evil. It doesn't make you foolish. It just makes both of you human. Still, there was one thing I hadn't decided yet. She hadn't contacted me since the settlement. No apology. No justification. Nothing. Until a week later, when her name appeared on my phone screen at 8:17 p.m. I stared at it for a long time before I let it ring out. She didn't leave a voicemail. 2 hours later, a message appeared. David. I know, I'm the last person you want to hear from. I need to explain, not to change anything, just to say it, please. I didn't answer, not because I hated her, not because I was still angry, but because I had nothing left to say. 3 days passed. Then another message. I was scared. I made choices I can't undo. I didn't plan to hurt you this way. I got caught in something I didn't know how to stop. I miss who we were. I'm sorry. I read it. Once. Deleted it. That was my closure. No confrontation. No final scene. Just silence. And a door that stayed closed. Some people want drama. They want the last word. But the truth is, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away without offering one. The FBI wrapped up their case a few weeks later. Eric and Sean were both indicted on multiple federal charges: fraud, forgery, conspiracy, property theft, real estate violations across state lines. Sean flipped under pressure and led investigators to 2 more partners, one in Texas, another in Nevada. The operation had spanned nearly 4 years. My case became the cornerstone of the prosecution. Agent Wolf called me after the indictments were public. You made it easier to build this case than you know, she said. Your documentation, your patience, your approach, it saved a lot of other families from being next. I thanked her. She paused. One more thing, she added. We recovered emails between Eric and 2 other individuals. Both were dating military spouses at the time of refinancing. Same pattern, same manipulation. We're pursuing further charges. I hung up the phone and sat on the cabin's porch looking out into the trees. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness, not relief, just stillness. There were no more battles to fight, no more documents to submit, no more messages to read. Just me, a cup of coffee, and a world that was still moving, slowly, quietly, but forward. I had chosen closure over confrontation, and in doing so I'd finally reclaimed something no one could forge, sell, or betray: myself. 3 months after Lena signed the final settlement, I sold the house. Not because I needed the money, not because I was forced to. I just couldn't stay inside walls that once held warmth but now echoed with betrayal. Even though the title was legally mine again, the house felt more like a museum of broken trust than a place to begin anew. I understood that to move forward, I needed a place untouched. No memories clinging to the curtains, no ghosts hiding in the corners. I found it in northern Montana, near Missoula. A small wooden cabin, 2 bedrooms, surrounded by tall pines and untouched soil. Behind the cabin, a crystal-clear stream flowed steadily like breath. No traffic, no close neighbors, just silence. Exactly what I needed. I restarted my life from zero, but it didn't feel like loss. I adopted a German shepherd, named him Scout. He didn't ask questions, he didn't judge. He was just there, loyal and silent. Mornings were spent on the porch with coffee, watching mist lift from the grass. Afternoons were for hiking the forest trails with Scout. Evenings were for reading, woodworking, and listening to the wind. I stopped wearing a watch, stopped counting time. There were no more deployment dates to prepare for, no unread messages hanging over my head, no more wondering why. Because the answer no longer mattered, I started crafting simple wooden furniture for locals. Some paid cash, others brought eggs, bread, or jars of homemade honey. Life was simple, and for the first time in a long time, I felt full. No one telling me who I should be, no one lying behind a familiar smile, just me and the truth. Every now and then, Lena's name would still appear on my phone screen. Messages left unread. Once I opened one. She had written, "I miss who we used to be." I didn't respond. I missed it too, but what we were no longer existed, and that was okay. One September afternoon, I got a handwritten letter. No logo, no junk, just a return address from Texas. I opened it and read, "Dear Mr. Harper, I'm the wife of a Navy man currently deployed overseas. A friend at the FBI told me your case helped stop the same kind of scam from happening to us. We nearly lost our home. If you hadn't stood up and fought back, we might have had nothing left. You have our gratitude. Thank you for not staying silent. E. Wallace, Fort Worth, TX." I read it 3 times. Then I pinned it to the fridge, next to a half-finished sketch of a table I never got around to building. That letter reminded me, sometimes the pain we endure becomes the protection someone else never knew they'd need. You don't always get applause. Some victories come in the form of a quiet morning, a loyal dog, a cabin far from the noise, and the peace of knowing you walked through fire and came out whole. I had once lost everything. Now I had everything. That mattered. And I was living. One quiet day at a time. Not everyone who's betrayed gets the chance to stand back up and claim justice. Not everyone who walks out of a broken life finds peace on the other side. But David did. Not through shouting or revenge, but through patience, clarity, and a quiet belief that when truth is prepared properly, it doesn't just survive, it wins. This story isn't just about a man who was betrayed. It's a lesson in emotional control, in stepping back when every part of you wants to rush forward and letting actions, not reactions, speak loudest. And most of all, it's proof that you can lose everything and still keep what matters most, yourself. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever stood on the edge between silence and action, share this story. And if you're still trying to move forward, whether from heartbreak or your own quiet collapse, drop a comment below that simply says, "I'm still standing." You never know who might need to see it. Don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe for more real stories, honest ones, full of pain, strength, and something we all need a little more of: hope. Thanks for being here. And in case no one's told you today, you deserve a new chapter, one quiet enough for you to finally hear yourself. Some endings don't come with closure, but sometimes walking away without a word is the loudest thing you can do. If this story made you feel something, share it, comment, "Still standing," and subscribe for more true stories that hit home. Thank you for watching, and remember, peace isn't given, it's reclaimed.